Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is 60 Masters Ruling America by the Imperator, AMORC. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 16, Number 3, April 1938. Thought of the Month, 60 Masters Ruling America by the Imperator, AMORC. Recently, we have heard much over the radio and in the newspapers about the famous speech made by President Roosevelt and some of his associates regarding the wealth and economic conditions in America being controlled by 60 American families. In fact, a book has been published setting forth this argument and trying to explain that in the hands of 60 American families lies not only the wealth of this United States, but its future power and its future growth and development. The argument is set forth that these 60 American families not only represent the largest individual fortunes in America through the sons and daughters-in-law of the principal wealthy men, but that the members of these various 60 families are members of a multiplicity of boards of directors, thereby interlocking the fortunes and financial activities and capital power of this country. If we would believe the argument set forth in the book, which seems to be given considerable credence by our president and some of his associates at Washington, all of us who are not a part of those 60 families are more or less enslaved by them and the power of wealth which they represent. It would seem that there would be no hope for any of the millions of the rest of us in regard to better economic, political, social, or financial conditions unless those 60 families condescend to permit the mass of Americans to have what is guaranteed to them by our big national constitution. It would seem that these 60 American families can cause depressions, famines, or abundance and good times by just sitting around a huge director's table and voting upon it one way or the other. It is a horrible thought to think that 100 million or more American citizens are the victims of the dictatorship of 60 families, who not only exert an influence in regard of everything of a political or social nature, but so control or possess or direct the circulation of the wealth of this nation that they are even more powerful than any European dictator or group of dictators. There is only one thing wrong with the argument presented by the author of the book and by those officials at Washington who believed him, and that is the lack of knowledge on the part of the author and the others about the 60 or more great masters in the United States who have even a greater influence than these 60 wealthy families. While it may be more or less true that 60 prominent families own, possess, or control a large portion of the negotiable currency or wealth of the nation, it is also absolutely true that 60 or more individuals direct and control, to a very great extent, the public opinion of the 100 million citizens of this country who expect and demand justice, security, liberty, and the right to pursue their affairs in a happy and contented manner. In the first place, there is no greater influence or power in any nation or any country, and especially in America, than public opinion. It is not often that this power of public opinion exerts itself, for it is not often that the mass of human beings in the United States, for instance, come together in mental and intellectual agreement about something and express their opinions militantly or politically or definitely enough to constitute the power that exists in their minds and hearts. But once that public opinion and the power back of it and through it exerts itself, it takes more than the possession of the wealth of the United States, more than the vote of Congress, or the veto of the President of the United States, or a decision of an advisory board constituting the brain trust at Washington to set aside or ignore it, or do anything contrary to it. And when I speak of the 60 great masters who are ruling or directing and influencing the destiny of these United States, I am not speaking of masters of finance or masters of the business world, or masters of statesmanship or politics, or even masters of social life. I am speaking of masters of human rights, of masters who are mystically and psychically trained, and who are leaders and directors of the psychological, spiritual, and moral thinking of millions of human beings. Nearly all of these 60 great masters are heads of organizations, or advisors to organizations, whose followers have absolute faith and confidence in the ideals and principles of such organizations, and who do not follow blindly what their leaders say, but follow intelligently the advice and recommendations given to them because they have found their leaders to be sincere and honest, unbiased and unprejudiced, and adhering to the true principles of American idealism. And when I speak of these many organizations, I mean organizations such as our own, for instance, where we have, within the definite confines of actual membership, thousands of intellectual men and women in every walk of life, and engaged in every profession and science and art. And many of these members not only have a wide and sympathetic following in their own families, but among pupils, patients, clients, friends, and acquaintances, who have learned that these persons are safe to follow and who are unbiased in their opinions and sincere in their constructive efforts. We have often referred to our own membership in America as being an invisible empire. We mean by this that while the membership and the constructive power it represents and the creative force it can exert are like the power of the people of a unified empire, the empire as a nation or race is invisible, inasmuch as our members politically are good American citizens and represent no physical empire separate and distinct from that of our federal government. On the other hand, it is not the geographical confines of an organization. It is not its number of cities, towns, or communities, or the population of them, or the wealth and treasures, assets and material things possessed by these persons in such a country that represents a powerful empire. It is the hearts and minds of the people, their faith and confidence in their statesmen and political leaders, their president or their king, their queen or their ruler. It is the support which they give to their government. It is the cooperation which they exert in carrying out of the laws and the defense of their country. It is the love and patriotism which they express when necessary. And it is the adherence to the ideas and principles of their country that constitutes these people an empire, rather than all of the other material, political, or geographical elements that are so often measured in measuring the size and strength of a country. In that regard, the Rosicrucian organization of AMORC does represent an invisible empire, since its people are unified on many fundamental principles. They agree in regard to many very fundamental ideals and practices. Their taste, likes, and dislikes are so greatly in harmony. Their love for justice, mercy, and liberty is so well established, and their dislikes or distrust for hypocrisy, destructive procedures, political schemes, judicial injustice, social preferment is so firmly based that their minds and hearts are fixed in regard to these things, and are not swayed or influenced by wealth or any of the economic problems of life. We know that our thousands of members are so scattered and so distributed in our communities, towns and cities, and in institutions and in places of assembly, and in places where young people and older people meet for their discussions and discourse, that it is easy for the correct patriotic, social, spiritual, and human element to be presented and made appealing. And the AMORC is but one of a number of such organizations in America. AMORC may be very distinctive in regard to its discourse of instruction, in regards to its mystical, scientific, and other forms of knowledge, and instruction regarding life and its purposes and its mysteries. But there are a number of other organizations in America which are just as patriotic, just as idealistic in regard to American principles and American fundamentals as AMORC. Some of these organizations have a very strong mystical and spiritual element in their ideals and activities, and quite a few of the leaders of these other organizations have cosmic cooperation and cosmic support in the right things they are attempting to do. When these organizations, therefore, promulgate or promote a truly constructive and idealistic program or principle for this American country, it has greater power to fulfill itself than can be offset by the wealth of 60 American families or 600 American families. It is this unseen and little-known power of the human mind exerted by many thousands of true American patriots and cosmically attuned individuals that represents the greater power in the affairs of this nation and has exerted itself on many occasions since the establishment of the Union of States. And the 60 or more leaders of these organizations really constitute a group of masters, far more powerful in their influence than the combined wealth of these 60 rich American families. As long as the United States of America is under the protection, direction, or influence of these many thousands of trained and qualified thinkers who are cooperating with the cosmic in its desires and have the cosmic support in their conclusions and decisions, America will be safe for its millions of real citizens and will be protected against any prolonged or serious destructive actions of those who hold only wealth in their hands as a power to wield in their own selfish interest and against public opinion. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.